You ever see someone about to make the biggest mistake of their life? That's exactly what happened tonight when this famous singer spotted a woman sitting quietly in his audience. He thought she'd be easy prey, just another regular person to embarrass for cheap laughs. But sometimes life has other plans. Sometimes that quiet person in the back row is hiding something that'll blow your mind. Trust me, you're not ready for this. Emma never planned on being here. The ticket sat in her kitchen drawer for weeks, right next to old takeout menus and expired coupons. Her co-worker Jessica won it on some random radio contest and practically forced it on her. "You need to get out more," Jessica had said, rolling her eyes when Emma tried to refuse. And no, binge-watching nature documentaries doesn't count as social activity. So here Emma was, squeezed into a seat that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Everyone around her looked like they'd stepped out of some fashion magazine, all designer clothes and perfect makeup. Emma tugged at her denim jacket. It was comfortable, practical, and suddenly felt completely wrong for this place. The venue screamed expensive. Crystal chandeliers hung everywhere. The ceiling had these elaborate paintings with gold trim, and the whole place smelled like money and pretension. Emma wondered if there was some dress code she'd missed on the ticket. "Your first time here?" The woman next to her had perfectly styled blonde hair and a top that sparkled under the lights. "Yeah," Emma said, trying not to sound as out of place as she felt. "Oh, you're in for a treat. I've seen everyone perform on this stage." The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Though honestly, some of these newer artists are all style and no substance, if you catch my drift." Emma nodded politely, though she wasn't sure she agreed. Good music was good music, right? Either it moved you, or it didn't. She'd always cared more about lyrics that told real stories than fancy vocal tricks. Anyway, the lights started dimming, and Emma felt that little flutter of excitement that comes with live performances. There's something magical about being in a room full of people all waiting for the same thing. That moment when music takes you somewhere else entirely. She'd been to maybe 3 concerts in her whole life. First was this folk festival when she was 16, all acoustic guitars and honest voices that made her fall in love with simple, real music. Then her aunt dragged her to some classical thing that turned out to be surprisingly beautiful. The third was a disaster. Some punk band her college roommate insisted on seeing where the music was so loud she couldn't understand a word and left with a splitting headache. This felt different already. People were excited but not screaming their heads off. It was like the difference between champagne and cheap beer. Both got you somewhere, but one had class. Emma settled back and decided to give this Damon Rivers guy a fair shot. She'd heard his songs on the radio. Catchy enough, decent voice, lyrics that were fine, if not exactly deep. He was popular for a reason. She figured maybe seeing him live would help her understand what all the fuss was about. The anticipation in the room was building. Conversations buzzed around her about favorite songs, past concerts, theories about what he might perform tonight. Emma found herself getting caught up in it despite her reservations. There was something infectious about being surrounded by people who genuinely loved something, even if she didn't quite get it yet. She pulled out her phone to check the time, then put it away. Jessica would probably text her tomorrow wanting a full report. "Did you have fun? Did you talk to anyone? Did you remember how to be a human being instead of a hermit?" Emma could already hear the interrogation. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe she'd even enjoy herself. At the very least, she'd have something interesting to tell Jessica on Monday morning instead of her usual weekend report of laundry and grocery shopping. Little did she know she was about to become the most interesting part of the entire show. When Damon Rivers walked onto that stage, Emma immediately understood why teenage girls lost their minds over him on social media. The guy was undeniably gorgeous. Dark hair, perfectly messy, navy blazer that fit like it was painted on, and the kind of confidence that suggested he'd never questioned himself about anything ever. "Good evening, beautiful people." His voice filled the venue, smooth and rich like expensive whiskey. The crowd went absolutely wild, and Damon just stood there soaking it up like he was born for this exact moment. He launched straight into his biggest hit, something upbeat that had everyone swaying and singing along. Emma had to give him credit. The man could definitely sing. Every note was perfect, powerful, technically flawless. But something about it left her cold. It felt more like watching a really polished commercial than experiencing actual music. Between songs, Damon worked the crowd like a master manipulator. "How's everyone feeling tonight?" Screams and cheers. "I can't hear you. How's everyone feeling?" Even louder screams now. "That's what I'm talking about. You know, I've performed all over the world, but there's something really special about—" He paused like he was trying to remember where he was. "About being here with all you gorgeous people tonight." Emma noticed he never actually said their city's name. Probably used the exact same line everywhere he went, filling in the blank with whatever crowd happened to be in front of him. As the show went on, Damon's real personality started bleeding through his polished act. He'd make comments about the venue that sounded like compliments, but had this weird edge to them. He'd point out people in the audience and make observations about their outfits that were supposed to be playful, but felt more like roasts disguised as jokes. "I absolutely love having real people in my audience," he said during one of his longer breaks, scanning the crowd with this predatory look. "Not just industry folks and music critics, but actual human beings living actual human lives. It keeps me honest, you know. Reminds me why I fell in love with music in the first place." The words sounded right, but his tone suggested he found these actual human beings more amusing than inspiring. Emma shifted uncomfortably. She'd worked enough customer service jobs to recognize condescension wrapped up in fake friendliness, and Damon was laying it on thick. "In fact," he continued, clearly building up to something, "some of my best performances happen when I can really connect with regular folks. When I can break down that wall between me and you and just share this incredible experience together." There it was again. Regular folks. He said it the same way her ex-husband used to talk about her little hobbies, like he was patting a child on the head for trying their best. The sequined woman next to Emma was eating it up, though. "He's so down to earth," she whispered. "So genuine and authentic." Emma bit her tongue. Authentic was literally the last word she'd use for what she was watching. Everything about this guy felt calculated, from his perfectly timed pauses to his strategically placed humble moments. He was talented, sure, and charismatic as hell, but genuine, not even close. As he moved into his next song, Emma looked around at the faces near her. Most people seemed completely hypnotized, lost in whatever fantasy he was selling them. They couldn't see what she was seeing, or maybe they just didn't want to. Sometimes people prefer the beautiful lie over the uncomfortable truth. But Emma had always been cursed with seeing through people's acts, and Damon Rivers' mask was getting thinner by the minute. Everything changed during what was supposed to be Damon's big emotional moment. Some ballad about finding true love in a fake world. The irony wasn't lost on Emma, considering who was singing it. He dimmed all the stage lights and was walking through the audience with a wireless mic, getting up close and personal with lucky fans. Most people were practically melting as he passed by, phones up, trying to get the perfect selfie. Emma was mostly just checking her watch, wondering if leaving before the encore would be considered rude. That's when it happened. Their eyes met. Damon had been working his way through the crowd with that practiced smile when he spotted Emma. She wasn't holding up a phone, wasn't reaching for him, wasn't even looking particularly impressed. In fact, she looked kind of bored, like someone politely sitting through a work presentation they had zero interest in. For someone who lived on constant adoration, Emma's complete indifference was apparently fascinating. "Well, hello there," he said, abandoning his planned route and heading straight for her. "You look like you're having the absolute time of your life." Emma felt her face get hot as people around her turned to see what had caught the star's attention. "I'm enjoying the show," she said carefully, which was technically true, even if enjoying was stretching it. Damon's smile got sharper, less friendly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma." "Emma." He said it like he was tasting something disappointing. "So tell me, Emma, what do you do when you're not attending concerts in your weekend casual look?" Nervous laughter rippled through the nearby crowd. Emma's face burned, but she kept her voice steady. "I work in an office." "An office?" Damon clapped his hands like she'd just told him the most delightful thing. "How wonderfully practical. I bet you have lots of opinions about music, don't you? Probably think those talent shows on TV showcase real artists." The condescension was impossible to miss now. Emma could see phones going up around her, people sensing drama and wanting to capture every second. She was becoming entertainment, someone to tear down for sport. "I think good music is good music wherever it comes from," Emma replied, finding her backbone. "And I think real talent doesn't need to put other people down to shine." A few people nearby made approving sounds, but Damon's eyes flashed dangerously. He clearly wasn't used to anyone pushing back, especially not someone he'd marked as an easy target. "Oh, we've got a philosopher in the house," he announced to the wider audience, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. "Tell you what, Emma from the office, since you seem to have such strong opinions about what real talent looks like, why don't you come up here and show us how it's done?" The challenge hung in the air like a loaded gun. Emma's stomach dropped as she realized this had stopped being playful banter and turned into a public execution disguised as audience participation. "Come on," Damon pressed, his smile now sharp enough to cut. "If talent speaks for itself, like you said, here's your big chance to let it talk." The crowd was buzzing now, some people encouraging her to go for it, others clearly anticipating a spectacular crash and burn. Emma could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could practically hear the social media posts already being written about whatever humiliation was about to unfold. Part of her wanted to sink into her seat and disappear. But a bigger part, a part that had been quiet way too long, was tired of people like Damon Rivers making others feel small just because they could. "You know what?" she said, standing up slowly. "Sure. Why not?" Walking up to that stage felt like moving through thick honey. Everything slowed down. The sound of her footsteps, the murmur of the crowd, even her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Emma was hyper-aware of everything. The click of phone cameras, the whispered conversations, the weight of all those eyes following her every move. Damon was practically glowing with anticipation as she reached the stage steps. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced like a carnival barker, "let's give it up for Emma from the office." The applause was polite but uncertain, the kind you hear at amateur night when everyone's bracing for secondhand embarrassment. Emma climbed those steps on shaky legs, and when the stage lights hit her full force, the rest of the venue disappeared into a black void. It felt like being the only person left in the world. "So," Damon said, holding out the microphone with theatrical flourish, "what's it going to be?" "Please don't tell me we're about to get some karaoke classics here." Emma took the mic, surprised by how solid it felt in her hands, how right it seemed to be there. Actually, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system, I had something else in mind. Something was shifting inside her chest. The fear was still there, cold and sharp. But underneath it, something else was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Standing here under these lights, she remembered things she'd forgotten about herself. Dreams she'd buried so deep she'd convinced herself they never existed. This song means something to me, she said, looking out past the lights into the darkness where she could feel the audience watching. It's about remembering who you really are when everyone else tries to tell you who you should be. She could see Damon in her peripheral vision, arms crossed, waiting for the train wreck he was so sure was coming. The audience had gone quiet. Not the electric quiet of anticipation, but the awkward hush of people preparing to look away from something embarrassing. Emma closed her eyes and let herself remember. Her mother singing while she cooked dinner, voice filling their small kitchen with warmth. Mrs. Patterson, her old voice teacher, who always said Emma had something special, but never pushed when the lessons had to stop. All those nights alone in her room, singing to her reflection and dreaming of moments exactly like this one. When she opened her eyes, everything had changed. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something else entirely. Not confidence exactly, but clarity. She knew who she was in this moment, and she knew what she had to give. The first note that came out was soft, almost conversational, like she was sharing a secret with a close friend, but it was pure in a way that cut through all the night's pretense and polish. This wasn't about showing off or proving anything. This was about telling the truth. The band scrambled to find her key and follow along, but Emma didn't need them. Her voice carried its own rhythm, its own power, its own complete honesty. As she found her groove, the song started building, not with forced drama, but with the natural momentum of water finding its way downhill. Damon's cocky smile was starting to crack around the edges. This wasn't what he'd expected. This wasn't what anyone had expected. And Emma was just getting started. For the first time in 20 years, she was exactly where she belonged. What happened next couldn't be explained by training or technique or any of the usual music industry metrics. It was something that came from deeper down, from that place where music lives before it becomes notes on paper or sounds in the air. Emma's voice filled that venue like it was coming home. She wasn't just singing the song. She was living it, breathing life into every single word with the kind of raw honesty that most people spend their whole lives trying to fake. Her voice had weight and texture, carrying stories that would take novels to tell any other way. It wasn't technically perfect like Damon's had been, but it was something infinitely more valuable. It was completely, utterly real. The change in the audience was immediate and profound. Phones started lowering as people forgot about capturing the moment and got lost in actually experiencing it. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the venue staff, who'd seen hundreds of performances in this room, stopped what they were doing to listen. But the most dramatic transformation was happening in Damon himself. That confident smirk had vanished completely, replaced by something that looked like shock, mixed with recognition. His arms had dropped to his sides, and he was staring at Emma like someone watching their entire worldview collapse in real time. Emma's voice climbed higher, not straining or forcing anything, but lifting with the natural grace of someone who had finally remembered who they really were. That simple denim jacket and white t-shirt that had seemed so wrong earlier now looked exactly right, honest, unpretentious, authentic in a way that made everything else in the room feel fake by comparison. As the song reached its peak, Emma opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. She could see faces clearly now in the front rows. Some people had tears streaming down their cheeks. Others looked stunned, and more than a few were smiling with the kind of pure joy that comes from witnessing something genuinely beautiful and unexpected. The final notes hung in the air long after Emma stopped singing, like the venue itself didn't want to let them go. The silence that followed was enormous, not empty, but full of something indefinable, like the moment between lightning and thunder when the whole world holds its breath. Then someone started clapping. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of applause that recognizes something special has just happened. Others joined in, and the sound built organically until the entire venue was on its feet. Not because they felt like they should, but because they couldn't help themselves. Emma stood there breathing hard, looking dazed like someone who'd just woken up from a long dream. The applause washed over her in waves, but what struck her most was the quality of it. This wasn't polite appreciation or manufactured enthusiasm. This was recognition, pure and simple. Damon appeared beside her, but he was a completely different person than the one who'd started the evening. All that swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like humility. He started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words for the first time all night. That was... I don't even... Emma looked at him with something that might have been compassion. Music isn't about making people feel small, she said quietly, handing him back the microphone. It's about helping everyone remember they're part of something bigger than themselves. The applause kept going, but Emma was already heading back toward the stage steps, ready to disappear into the crowd where she belonged.